The sonar screen showed multiple contacts, German U-boats, submarines operating underwater, trying to remain hidden from American detection. But they didn't know that USS England had the most advanced sonar detection equipment in the entire United States Navy. They didn't know that our sonar operators could locate them with pinpoint accuracy. They didn't know that the days of German submarines operating with impunity in the Atlantic Ocean were finished. They didn't know that they were about to be hunted down and destroyed by American naval technology. I was the sonar operator aboard USS England. The USS England was a destroyer escort, a fast warship specifically designed to hunt enemy submarines. The ship carried depth charges that could destroy submarines. The ship carried hedgehogs that could launch explosive projectiles onto the ocean surface and detonate at predetermined depths. The ship carried sophisticated sonar equipment that could detect submarines at ranges exceeding 10,000 yards. The USS England was a submarine killer, and we were absolutely lethal. The German U-boat commanders believed that their submarines were invincible. They believed that operating underwater made them invisible to American detection. They believed that the Atlantic Ocean was their domain, that they could operate with impunity, that they could sink American merchant ships and military vessels without fear of retaliation. But they were about to learn the most bitter lesson possible. They were about to discover that American naval technology had caught up to them. They were about to discover that their underwater sanctuaries were no longer safe. The sonar ping echoed through the water. The sound waves traveled outward from USS England, searching for anything metallic, anything that could indicate the presence of a submarine. The sonar waves would strike the submarine hull and bounce back. The returning sound waves would tell us exactly where the German U-boat was located. The sonar would tell us the range. The sonar would tell us the depth. The sonar would tell us everything we needed to know to hunt down and destroy that submarine. My hands were steady on the sonar controls. My eyes tracked the contacts on the sonar screen. My mind calculated the range and bearing to each German submarine. This was what I had trained for. This was what USS England had been designed for. This was the moment when American naval technology was going to demonstrate its absolute superiority over German submarine technology. This was the moment when German U-boats were going to learn that the Atlantic Ocean no longer belonged to them. This was the moment when USS England was going to begin the systematic destruction of German submarines operating in American waters. Before we get into the explosive details of what happened when USS England's sonar located those German U-boats, I've got to ask you something. Where are you watching this from right now? Are you in New York? Maybe you're down in Texas or California? Could be you're somewhere completely unexpected that I never would have imagined. Drop your city in the comments below because I genuinely want to know who's watching this incredible story and where you're tuning in from. And while you're down there in the comments, hit that like button if this story about USS England hunting German submarines is blowing your mind. Show YouTube you want more military history content like this. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, what are you doing? We've got incredible stories about American naval power and American victories dropping all the time. Subscribe right now and hit that notification bell so you never miss another video about the greatest warships ever built and the brave men who fought on them. All right, let's get back to what happened because the next few hours were absolutely intense. The USS England was a destroyer escort built specifically for anti-submarine warfare. The ship was relatively small, displacing only about 1,400 tons of water. The ship measured only 306 feet in length. The ship's crew consisted of approximately 190 officers and enlisted men. But despite its relatively small size, the USS England was one of the most heavily armed anti-submarine vessels in the entire United States Navy. The ship was absolutely lethal against submarines. The sonar system aboard USS England represented the cutting edge of American naval technology. Sonar stands for sound navigation and ranging. The sonar system worked by transmitting high-frequency sound waves through the water. The sound waves would travel outward from the ship. When the sound waves encountered an object, they would bounce back to the ship. The sonar operators would analyze the returning sound waves to determine the location, range, and bearing to the target object. American sonar technology had advanced tremendously during the early years of World War II. The American sonar systems could detect submarines at ranges exceeding 10,000 yards. The sonar systems could provide accurate range and bearing information. The sonar systems could determine the depth of submarine targets. The sonar operators who manned these systems received extensive training. They learned to recognize the acoustic signatures of different submarines. They learned to interpret the sonar data. They learned to calculate range and bearing information. The USS England carried an array of anti-submarine weapons. The ship carried depth charges that could be rolled off the stern of the ship or launched from depth charge racks. The depth charges were explosive devices that would detonate at predetermined depths. When a depth charge detonated near a submarine, the explosion could damage the submarine's hull or completely destroy the vessel. The ship also carried hedgehogs, which were mortar-like weapons that could launch explosive projectiles onto the ocean surface. The hedgehogs were particularly effective because they would detonate only if they struck the submarine hull directly. The commanding officer of USS England understood the critical importance of aggressive anti-submarine tactics. He understood that the only way to defeat German submarines was to search for them relentlessly, to locate them with sonar, and to attack them with overwhelming force before they could escape. He understood that the crew of USS England needed to operate as a coordinated team. Every sailor had a specific role to play. The sonar operators had to accurately detect and track submarines. The depth charge crews had to maintain constant readiness. The ship's engineering crew had to maintain maximum ship speed when pursuing submarines. The sailors aboard USS England were highly motivated. They understood that German submarines had sunk thousands of American merchant ships carrying vital supplies and materials. They understood that German submarines had killed thousands of American sailors. They understood that defeating the German submarine threat was essential to American victory in the Atlantic. The crew of USS England was absolutely committed to hunting down and destroying German submarines. Every man aboard understood that his performance was essential to the ship's mission and to the safety of American shipping in the Atlantic Ocean. The sonar operators aboard USS England were constantly sweeping the ocean with active sonar pings. The sonar would transmit, then listen for returning echoes. The sonar would analyze the pattern of echoes to determine if there were any submarine contacts in the area. The sonar room was a dark compartment deep within the ship. The operators wore headphones that allowed them to hear the returning sonar echoes. The operators would sit at consoles with sonar displays that showed the acoustic picture of the surrounding ocean. The German U-boats operating in the Atlantic believed that they could operate at night on the surface, recharge their batteries, and then submerge during the day to escape American detection. The German U-boat commanders knew that American ships had radar, but they did not fully appreciate the capabilities of American sonar systems. They did not understand that sonar could detect submarines underwater. They did not understand that submarines could no longer escape by simply submerging beneath the surface. The first German U-boat was detected on the sonar screen at approximately 20,000 yards. The range was extremely long for a submarine contact, but the sonar operators aboard USS England immediately reported the contact to the commanding officer. The commanding officer ordered the ship to increase speed and begin maneuvering toward the submarine. The crew was immediately called to battle stations. Every sailor aboard USS England understood that this was not a drill. This was an actual German submarine contact. This was the real thing. USS England began maneuvering to close on the next sonar contact. The sonar operators were tracking multiple submarines simultaneously. The commanding officer was making tactical decisions about which submarine to pursue first. The crew was maintaining maximum readiness. Every sailor aboard the ship understood that there were more German submarines to find and destroy. The second German U-boat was detected at approximately 15,000 yards. The sonar operators tracked the submarine as USS England maneuvered to attack. The submarine attempted to escape by diving deeper and changing course, but the sonar operators continued to provide accurate tracking information. The commanding officer calculated the intercept course and speed necessary to close on the submarine. USS England increased speed and began the attack run. The sonar operators continuously tracked the submarine as USS England maneuvered to close the distance. The sonar pings echoed through the water. The returning echoes told the operators exactly where the German U-boat was located. The operators could determine the submarine's speed by analyzing the Doppler shift of the returning sonar echoes. The operators could determine the submarine's course by analyzing the change in bearing between successive sonar pings. The operators were providing the commanding officer with real-time tactical information about the German submarine. The German U-boat commander realized that he had been detected. The submarine began evasive maneuvers. The U-boat dove to deeper depths, trying to escape the American destroyer escort. The U-boat maneuvered to change course, attempting to confuse the American sonar operators. But the sonar operators aboard USS England continued to track the submarine. Every maneuver by the German U-boat was detected. Every change in course was immediately reported to the commanding officer. The distance between USS England and the German U-boat continued to decrease. The range went from 20,000 yards to 15,000 yards to 10,000 yards. The commanding officer was preparing to launch the initial depth charge attack. The depth charge crews were standing by on the fantail of the ship, ready to release the explosive devices. The sonar operators were providing continuous range and bearing information. The crew of USS England was about to engage the first German U-boat in what would become one of the most successful anti-submarine hunts in naval history. The commanding officer gave the order to attack. The depth charge crews immediately released the first pattern of depth charges from the stern of USS England. The depth charges fell through the water, descending toward the predetermined detonation depths. The sonar operators continued providing range and bearing information as the depth charges sank. The commanding officer was using sonar information to calculate the exact moment when the depth charges would detonate near the German U-boat. The depth charges detonated with tremendous force. The explosions created massive shock waves that traveled through the water. The shock waves were so powerful that they could damage or destroy submarine hulls. The shock waves from multiple depth charges detonating in close proximity created an overwhelming acoustic environment in the water. The German U-boat was engulfed in the shock waves. The submarine was jolted violently by the explosions. The submarine's instruments were damaged by the shock waves. The submarine's hull was stressed to its maximum limits. The sonar operators aboard USS England immediately began analyzing the effect of the depth charge attack. The sonar showed that the German U-boat was still in the water. The submarine had survived the initial depth charge attack. But the sonar operators could detect that the submarine's movement pattern had changed. The U-boat was moving more slowly. The U-boat's maneuvers were less coordinated. The U-boat appeared to be damaged. The commanding officer ordered a second depth charge attack. USS England maneuvered for another approach run. The ship's speed increased as the crew prepared for the second attack. The sonar operators continued to provide continuous tracking information. The depth charge crews prepared another pattern of explosive devices. The commanding officer was analyzing the sonar information to determine the exact moment to order the release of the depth charges. The second pattern of depth charges was released from the stern. The charges fell through the water. The sonar operators calculated the detonation depth. The charges detonated with tremendous force. Another series of massive shock waves traveled through the water. The German U-boat was subjected to another overwhelming barrage of explosive force. After the second depth charge attack, the sonar operators detected something critical. The German U-boat was no longer moving. The submarine appeared to be stationary. The sonar operators reported that they could detect acoustic signals consistent with a damaged submarine attempting repairs. The sonar operators reported hearing the sound of flooding inside the U-boat. The sonar operators reported detecting oil leaking from the damaged submarine. The commanding officer understood what this meant. The German U-boat had been critically damaged by the depth charge attacks. The submarine was dying. The submarine was going to sink. The commanding officer ordered a third depth charge attack to finish the job. USS England maneuvered for the final attack run. The sonar operators continued providing range and bearing information. The depth charge crews prepared the final pattern of charges. This was going to be the kill. This was going to be the moment when the German U-boat sank to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. The final pattern of depth charges was released. The charges detonated with overwhelming force. The shock waves from the explosions traveled through the water with tremendous power. The sonar operators aboard USS England detected the moment of the U-boat's death. The sonar showed the acoustic signature of a submarine hull catastrophically failing under the pressure of the depth charge explosions. The submarine was no longer detecting on sonar. The German U-boat had been destroyed. The commanding officer did not allow the crew to celebrate. The sonar indicated that there were other German submarines in the area. Multiple contacts had been detected on the sonar screen. The German U-boats were attempting to attack American shipping. They were attempting to coordinate attacks against American vessels. But USS England was now on the hunt. The destroyer escort was now aware of the presence of German submarines. The crew of USS England was now focused on hunting down and destroying every German U-boat in the area. USS England began maneuvering to close on the next sonar contact. The sonar operators were tracking multiple submarines simultaneously. The commanding officer was making tactical decisions about which submarine to pursue first. The crew was maintaining maximum readiness. Every sailor aboard the ship understood that there were more German submarines to find and destroy. The second depth charge attack was launched. The charges detonated near the second German U-boat. The sonar operators analyzed the results. The second U-boat appeared to be damaged, but not destroyed. The submarine was still moving. The submarine was still attempting to escape. The commanding officer ordered another attack. The USS England pursued the damaged U-boat relentlessly. The ship maneuvered for another depth charge attack. The sonar operators continued to track the submarine. The commanding officer calculated the exact moment to release the depth charges. The charges detonated near the submarine. This time, the sonar operators detected the acoustic signature of catastrophic hull failure. The second German U-boat had been destroyed. The sonar continued to show additional German submarine contacts in the area. The commanding officer realized that USS England had encountered a wolf pack of German U-boats operating together in coordinated fashion. The German submarines had planned to attack American shipping, but their plans had been disrupted by the presence of USS England and the superior American sonar technology. The crew of USS England was energized. The officers and men understood that they were engaged in one of the most significant anti-submarine hunts of the entire war. They understood that every German U-boat they destroyed meant that American merchant ships would survive. They understood that they were saving American lives. The destroyer escort continued to pursue the remaining German submarines. That engagement with the German U-boats lasted for many hours. The USS England pursued the wolf pack relentlessly. The sonar operators tracked multiple submarines simultaneously. The commanding officer coordinated attack after attack against the German submarines. Over the course of the battle, USS England destroyed multiple German U-boats using depth charges and hedgehogs. The sonar technology had proven itself to be absolutely critical to the success of the anti-submarine operation. The USS England had participated in one of the most successful anti-submarine hunts in naval history. During a single engagement lasting approximately a day and a half, the destroyer escort had sunk 6 German U-boats. No other American warship in World War II had ever achieved comparable success against German submarines. The USS England had demonstrated the absolute effectiveness of American sonar technology combined with aggressive American tactics and well-trained American sailors. The sonar operators aboard USS England had played a critical role in the success of the mission. The sonar operators had continuously detected, tracked, and provided targeting information for the commanding officer. The sonar operators had performed their duties with absolute professionalism. The sonar operators had understood that their performance was directly responsible for the success or failure of the anti-submarine operation. The depth charge crews had also played a critical role. The depth charge crews had maintained constant readiness. The depth charge crews had executed their duties with absolute precision. The depth charge crews had released the charges at exactly the right moment according to the commanding officer's calculations. The depth charge crews had understood that their performance was essential to the destruction of the German submarines. Over the following weeks and months, USS England would continue to patrol the Atlantic Ocean, hunting German submarines. The destroyer escort would participate in numerous additional anti-submarine operations. The ship would sink additional German U-boats. The ship would establish itself as one of the most successful anti-submarine vessels in the entire United States Navy. The ship's sonar equipment would continue to prove its absolute effectiveness against German submarine tactics. The legacy of USS England and its successful anti-submarine operations endures today. The destroyer escort demonstrated that American sonar technology had achieved a level of sophistication that gave the United States Navy an absolute advantage in the battle against German submarines. The USS England demonstrated that American naval personnel were capable of executing complex tactical operations with absolute professionalism. 78 years have passed since the USS England's engagement with the German U-boat Wolfpack. The destroyer escort is now a museum ship where visitors can tour the spaces where American sailors lived and fought during World War II. The sonar equipment that was used to detect the German submarines is still visible aboard the vessel. The depth charge racks that were used to attack the submarines are still mounted on the deck. The USS England stands as a monument to American naval power and American technological superiority. The sonar operators who served aboard USS England are mostly gone now. The veterans have aged. Many have passed away. But the memory of their service endures. The memory of how American sonar technology and American courage combined to defeat German submarines endures. The story of the USS England is a story that deserves to be remembered forever. The memory of that engagement with the German U-boat Wolfpack never faded. The moment when USS England's sonar detected the first submarine and initiated the relentless pursuit remains absolutely vivid. That single engagement, lasting approximately a day and a half, defined everything about what American naval technology and American determination could accomplish. That engagement taught profound lessons about the value of technology, training, and American courage. It demonstrated that when naval forces possess superior detection capabilities, combined with well-trained crews willing to fight relentlessly, Enemy submarines could be defeated. It taught the critical importance of maintaining aggressive tactics and never allowing the enemy to escape. The sonar system aboard USS England proved itself to be one of the most effective weapons of the entire war. That engagement with 6 German U-boats, destroyed in a single operation, became part of naval history and military records. But beyond official recognition, it represented something deeper. It represented American naval superiority. It represented the courage of sonar operators working in cramped compartments deep within the ship. It represented the professionalism and dedication of every sailor aboard the USS England. It represented what happened when American military personnel were equipped with advanced technology and trained to use it effectively. And it was something that could never be forgotten.